Welcome back to another awesome episode of the Super Duper Podcast.
You did it again.
Maybe that's the intro right there.
Yeah. This is the prolific super producer podcast.
Dude, you get the bass, you can up the bass. Yeah, perfect. Welcome to another episode of the prolific super producer.
I'm going to leave that one in. I like that one. That's the winner.
Hey, if you want to be a super producer, you're in the right place, man. There's only one podcast for you. Okay.
Oh, man.
But, hey, this is the prolific...
All right, here, I'll do it for you.
Can you continue to do this one, Tyson? Then I'll hop in. I don't mind.
All right, so welcome to the prolific super producer podcast.
Yes.
And we today are going to be talking about how to write way more songs than you could ever produce. And that really just begs the question, why do you want to write so many songs? Yeah. And ultimately, that comes down to one reason why I'm going to tell you in just a minute. But first, I want to allow Nathan to tell you about a super cool guide. If you struggle with finishing the songs, not just writing, hooks and choruses, if you want to finish your songs, then Nathan has an awesome guide for you that you can get at finishguides.com. I'm just going to pitch it for you.
Dude, no, that's a good point, though, because, hey, maybe someone's seeing this episode title and they're like, how to write more songs than you'll ever be able to produce, and you are already struggling with, getting to production. So you're like, you can't even envision yourself making that many songs. I used to not be able to envision myself doing that either. I remember a time where, I was clocking about 10 songs a year, 12 songs a year, something like that. And then, up to lately being able to do 2 to 3 a week with a full-time job. So there's a way to do it. And I found it's through your workflow. It's through changing the way that you show up and changing the way you behave when you're in front of your DAW, when you've got your instrument, when you got the microphone on. I put together a guide breaking down that process that really changed things for me, and it's free, and I want to share it with you. So if you'd like to check that out, if you're struggling with finishing your own songs, you can go to finishsongsguide.com, and it's going to walk you through a 5-step process. Super simple. 1 through 5, and you'll have a finished song. And if you have songs that are almost done, but you can't crack the code, I challenge you to plug it into the system, maybe jump in step 2 or 3, and then finish it out all the way through. I found it to be very helpful. I've, talked to a lot of people who found it to be helpful just by changing your workflow, even one thing in this free, stinking PDF 10-page guide. If it could be worth changing your whole workflow, it could be worth changing everything that you're doing. If you just take a second, glance it over, I think it'd be helpful. So finishsongsguide.com, perfect companion to this specific episode for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to 10x your output on songs, download the guide and then listen to the rest of this episode, because everything we could tell you today is going to completely revolutionize the way that you are able to write and ultimately produce songs and get your best foot out there in the industry and ultimately achieve whatever goals that you're trying to achieve right now in music. So we're going to talk about why you want to produce more songs. So tiptoed around this idea of why you should write more songs. And ultimately, it comes down to not every song you write is worth producing. And I know that it's really hard to hear that sometimes, because especially when I was first starting to write music and produce music and do all of this stuff, I was so emotionally attached to every single song baby that I produced. And I wanted every single one of my song babies to grow up and to be big songs and to go out there in the world and do amazing things.
Yeah.
However, it's difficult to recognize that a lot of the songs that you produce or write are not going to be worthy of even producing them, because you're going to waste time, you're going to waste money on ultimately producing things that aren't actually that good. Even if you look at the analogy of, say, baseball, if you're trying to hit home runs every single time you go up there, yeah, you're trying to hit a home run every single time you hit the plate. Are you going to hit a home run every single time you step up to the plate? No. Even the at-bats is, I think 30% is a really good rate of actually being able to strike the ball, let alone actually get a home run every single time. So that's ultimately the level that songs are at as well. We need to write 10 songs and then we might get 1 home run, or we need to write 5 songs and we might get 1 that's actually good and worthy of production. So ultimately, I'm trying to help you in kind of detaching yourself away from your songs and not be so emotionally attached to each and every one of them that you feel like you have to produce each one. Because ultimately, as I said before, you're going to waste time, you're going to waste money, you're going to waste emotional energy on these songs that then you put out there. They're not actually going to do anything for you because they're not actually that good of songs. And then it's just going to dilute your brand and ultimately end up with just discouraging you from ever actually creating more music. And so ultimately what I want you to do is I want you to write more songs than you ever produce. I want you to produce the best ones that then go out in the world and get amazing reviews and comments and ultimately encourage you to produce more music. So this is a feeding cycle that ultimately will help you produce more, produce better, and ultimately be more confident with the music that you're putting out there.
Yes.
So with all of that said, where do we start? How do we write more songs than we could ever produce, Nathan?
Where does it start? Well, it's, to keep it super tactical, right? I think this is so underrated. Writing to something that inspires you. Like starting with something that inspires you. Like spend time on how you start a song. Like if you are not inspired, like I feel like inspiration is the key to moving quickly. And I feel like inspiration at the same time can be this elusive thing for us creatives where we need to have our candle and our mason jar filled with coffee and the lights need to be dimmed. And it's not Thursday at 6:00. I can't write a song. I'm not creative yet. I'm being a little goofy, but like we can get a little hoaxy around the mojo. We think that inspiration is something that hits us as opposed to us hitting it, like us trying to get it. And that's kind of that's the side that I come from when I'm trying to help people make songs. It's like, no, you don't need to wait for inspiration. You create inspiration. And so a way that I found to really streamline things is to spend time at the start. Like don't even begin writing unless the music, the sample, the gibberish, the lyrics that maybe you have in your phone, like however you start your song, it has got to inspire you. You've got to feel it a little bit. It's got to at least be something that would encourage you to continue on, like to see what happens next because it's so cool. It's got the vibe, And I don't think you need inspiration to be able to find the vibe. I think you have the vibe and you're like, oh, this is cool, and that spurs inspiration. So that's kind of where I always advise people to start. How do I write more songs? How do I write faster? How do I get bigger volume? Yeah, okay, we can talk about all kinds of tactics. I'm going to ask you how you start. Like, I'm always going to start there. Like, how do you start your songs? Oh, well, I kind of just pick something on Splice, like this loop. Okay, cool. Well, like, is it a cool loop? Like, do you dig it? I mean, it sounds like a song. It sounds like one of my favorite songs. It's like, dude, it can work, but I feel like it's worth having something that just you can't help but write to. You can't wait to finish it, And that's kind of how I think that's the first step to moving quicker. I don't know what your thoughts are there.
One part of this too is that a lot of times the same type of vibe will always inspire us, which is why artists tend to produce the same genres in all of their music. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'll be inspired by other people's music in other genres, but ultimately you yourself, when you're writing music, generally there's just like one thing that just like really sparks something. And for me, that is palm muted guitars. Like electric palm muted guitars. I don't know what it is about them. But if I have one track that's a palm muted guitar, I'm like, this is the right thing. This is it. And so, obviously for everybody, that's going to be something different. And that's not necessarily always going to be the same thing. For me, it happens to be, but that's okay. But at the end of the day, it's really helpful to find out what those things are for you and then create a template in your DAW with those things already preloaded. So if I always... For myself, it's always the palm muted guitar, so I have an electric guitar track. For me, it's obviously I have a vocal track. Also, I always have this same key. It's like this vintage like Rhodes sample or something.
Yes, sir.
It's so good. And then I will also have the same drum kit, and that's my starting point. And your starting point might be different. You might have some other drum loops that always inspire you, or samples that always have the right vibe for you. And whatever that is for you, use that and use that as a starting point. You can always change it later. So you don't have to like marry the samples that you're choosing, but just choose samples that ultimately do inspire you to move forward with the project. Because ultimately, if you produce a first, say, chorus and it's like it's not that good, it's like you're not going to want to continue on. And so you're going to want it to sound good enough that you are like, okay, this has promise, this has potential, and I'm really excited about finishing this out and getting it in front of somebody. If I'm not like excited about showing my friends the song that I'm working on, then it's probably not very good.
Yes.
At least that's my measure that I use. I don't know what you think about that.
No, I think that's really good. And I was just thinking too, like something I had been guilty of and still am every once in a while, but used to be really bad at this, is whatever I started with had to be there at the finished product. And I think that was a really good point that you said that I wanted to like reiterate to people is, yeah, just because you start with something that inspired you and now you're in the throes of the song and you realize that maybe that thing that started you isn't as prominent as you thought it might be, that's okay, because it's more important that you get moving. So something I'll say a lot is you can't steer a parked car. Like it's more important that you are moving. It's more important that you have something that started you and propelled you to move forward. And to me, it doesn't matter if it stays in or not, because I care that I'm in motion. I care that I'm creatively in motion, because the worst thing is, I'm sure we've all felt this, is just sitting there and staring and thinking and nothing's happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say, like, that was a really good point. You know, it doesn't matter if it stays in the end, but like what matters is it got you going, you know? And that's almost, to me, worth a little more because you were able to flesh out a song, you know? So
Yeah.
Tyson, could you really quick too, just in case someone might have heard template and been like, what? Like, maybe they're just getting familiar with a DAW or something like that. Like, could you break that down a little bit? Like, what do you mean by have a template for yourself?
The simplest way that I can do this for you, if you want to go do this right now, open up your DAW, then go to your DAW, open it up, and then we're going to create a template for you, right? This is what we're doing. We're going to create a track or a software track. So if it's a MIDI-based track, that's perfectly okay, either one. And then go in through your samples in that track, or a tone if it's, say, a guitar, and you want to go find a simulated amp or whatever that just gets the right vibe that you know is going to get you going creatively. Then load that up into that track. So for me, I'm going to create an audio track. I'm going to put a guitar amp sim on there that is then going to, get the right color. It's always going to be a Marshall because I just love British amps, so I can't.
Nice.
Anyhow, so that's going to be mine, and it's going to sound really good with the palm muted guitar because that's just my thing.
Come on, yeah.
And then I'm going to load up another software instrument, and that's going to be a VST, or just a MIDI track, essentially, for lack of a better term. And that is going to be my Rhodes piano. And then I'm going to create another one, and that's going to be my vocal that I'm going to use for my gibberish melodies. And that is going to have just like a basic EQ and compressor on there. Ultimately, it doesn't matter too much, but just get something that, again, inspires you, and then have that project. Don't write anything yet, and then save as, and then save that in a special folder. That's your template. That's your starting point, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then you're going to go to that project every time, and then you're going to open it up. You're going to save it as a new project, and then you're going to start writing your song every single time. Some DAWs, like Logic, have an actual like template special place for templates, which it's basically just the same thing. It's just they just call it something different, and then they automatically have a special folder for you. But at the end of the day, you can just do a save as project, and it's going to be perfectly fine. But that's what I mean by a template, so that when you open it up, it's ready to go. You don't have to go searching for your instruments. You don't have to go searching for the right VSTs that you like. It's just automatically going to be there, and you can just get started right away.
Yes. So this is huge if you're listening to this. If you are not writing to stuff that's inspiring you, and you are letting the friction of your song-making software knock you out every time you try to make something, it's no wonder you're not making as many songs as you'd like to. And I'm talking to my former self. Like, you know what I mean? So imagine the power of this, right? You have something that's actually inspired you, right? A vibe, a word, however you start, it's inspiring you. So you're like, I want to flesh this idea out. This is so cool. I can't wait to make this. So you open up your software, and it's like 2 clicks, and you are able to track the gibberish. The piano's already loaded up. The whatever. So what Tyson's describing is such a powerful tactic to be creating faster and creating more efficiently, because within you can have an idea, and depending on how fast your computer boots up, I guess, like you can have an idea, and then like 2 minutes, you're making it, you're fleshing it out. And that path of, less resistance is so integral to creating. So, okay, so we've got that fleshed out, right? We've got our idea, and then we've got a template that's rocking. Now let's say we're in the throes of doing this. Let's give people kind of a little system, so to speak, right? Of like, what do we do now that we're able to create? What's some little little hacks we can give people?
The very first thing that I always do when I'm going to write songs is I want to break it down into the simplest parts possible. And what I mean by that, when I start a song, I will only write for 15 minutes. And this makes it really easy to start, right? Because if I have to sit down and I'm going to say, okay, the next 2 hours, I'm going to write a song and I'm going to have it a finished song by the end of these 2 hours. That's really intimidating. That works for some people like Nathan, who's a really good songwriter. But for people like me, who's not as good at songwriting, I just need to bite off small chunks and say, okay, for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to do one thing. And that is, I'm going to write the hook of the song. I'm going to write a chorus. That's it. That's the only thing I'm going to do for the next 15 minutes. So I'm going to write a chorus. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to set up a, chord structure. I'm just going to record something that sounds nice, that inspires me for the next, and then that's going to take me, 5 minutes maybe. And then from there, I'm going to then do some mental and vocal gibberish over the top of this chord structure. Yes. And that's all I do for the next 15 minutes. And at the end of that 15 minutes, my goal is I have a chord progression and I also have a melody over the top of it. That's it. That's all my goal is for the next 15 minutes. And because I set this aside like a very small chunk of time to do this, then I get it done really fast. Because how long does it take sometimes if you're sitting down, you don't have a template, You'll spend the first 30 minutes just getting your session set up, let alone actually getting anything accomplished. Oh my and by the time you have everything set up, you're like, my creative juices are kind of spent already. I don't have any energy left, and so I'm just gonna go, play Call of Duty or something. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Something that has less friction.
Right, exactly. And so you want to make it as easy as possible to get in the zone, and then ultimately you just want to be able to get something done. Even if you only have 15 minutes between classes or something, if you're in college, then just get that chorus written. And then you can find these little tiny 15-minute pockets throughout your day of it's not, I don't have enough time to start something big, but I just want to get something done. I want to feel productive. Then these are perfect little snippets to throw in here that you could actually do in the college library in between classes if you wanted.
Yes. I love that. It's just so approachable. That's why I love this. When Tyson was telling me about this, I was like, I have never thought of that before. Because like he said, for me now, it's okay, I'm going to sit down a couple hours from now, whole song's done. But that's on the backside of years and years of actually doing bite-sized approaches. You know what I mean? So when I'm teaching people, I always advise this stuff. And this is so good because 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there, and you're just fleshing out ideas after idea. And I think the key, as we've talked about already in this podcast, is he's trying to write a chorus. Yes, if you're writing songs and you hope that they go somewhere, don't bore us, get us to the chorus. Chorus is king. So if that's the highest return on your time, if you crack the code on your chorus, y'all, you have half of your song written because a chorus is repeated 3 or 4 times, right? If you crack the code on your chorus, you have half of your song figured out. Melodically, lyrically. Love it. Just love it.
Yeah. I'm going to stop and tell you to rewind 30 seconds and just listen to that again. Because if you hear nothing else in this episode, that's going to give you the highest return on your time and energy is focusing on this chorus. All right, so if you're listening to this podcast, then you're probably already producing and mixing your own music. And if you're unable to get that professional sheen or quality or vibe for your songs, then I want to let you in on a little secret. Most mixers are trying to compensate their lack of professional mixes by getting more plugins, by using more advanced tips or tricks or techniques in their mixes, or relying on buying more professional gear in order to compensate for their lack of quality mixes. But in reality, most mixers' core problem is actually mixing subjectively or approaching mixing from just a creative mindset entirely. Obviously, mixing is still a somewhat of a creative skill. It's actually far more objective than most people realize. Because if we think about it, everyone agrees on what a professional mix actually is. If that weren't the case, then it would be an entirely subjective field. But in reality, mixing is actually incredibly objective because everyone agrees on what a pro song sounds like. And so mixing objectively can actually help you avoid being your own worst enemy inside of your mixes and ultimately allow you to just check all of the boxes that a professional mix should check, and then your mix will sound objectively professional. And so if you're mixing your own music and you're motivated to actually learn the objective skill of mixing, mixing. And if you want to ensure that your music sounds pro, then I would love to help you out by teaching you the 5 objective standards that everybody is judging your mix by, and how you can use objective mixing to solve those 5 problems inside of your mix, and then also how to do all of that in under 3 hours per song without pro gear, premium plugins, or utilizing templates or presets. So this is something that piques your interest, then go to theobjectivemix.com to order my brand new book, The Objective Mix. This will teach you how to mix objectively professional mixes every single time you sit down to mix. This provides you with my entire mixing workflow, along with all of the breakthrough lessons that I've learned in the last 16 years of mixing music. So if that is interesting to you at all, then again, go to theobjectivemix.com or click the link right below this video. Can't wait to see you on the inside. So with that, let's get back to the podcast. Or one more thought to this process as we're talking about writing the initial just hook or chorus of your song. And that is, once you have this initial hook, leave it. Do not finish that song. Have it, save it as a project, save it as, project 1 and then project 2, and then write as many hooks as possible. So this is how far I take this. I recently wrote a 5-song EP. Ultimately, I only produced 4. But I wrote 64 songs, 64 hooks, 64 choruses before I actually wrote the EP. So my measurement is usually 10 to 1. So if I write 10 choruses, I will use one of those choruses, because I know that 90% of the material that I write is not going to be very good. It's not worthy of producing. So ultimately, if I have a 10-song EP, or a 10-song album, I'm going to write 100 songs minimum for that. And that is my personal rule. I recommend it for other people because I believe in it very strongly that most of the stuff you produce is not going to be very good, but some of it's going to be awesome. Mm-hmm. And the more iterations that you get of this, obviously, the higher your batting average, speaking, is going to get. So Nathan has written way more songs than me, so his batting average is probably, twice what mine is. So he might need to write 5 songs to write 1 banger, while I need to write 10 songs to write 1 banger. And if you're just starting on your journey, you might need to write 100 songs to write 1 banger. Yes. And that's okay. That's just where you're at. And the rule is, though, right, or the guideline, I should say, is that write as many songs as possible, pick the best ones that you actually want to produce. It's going to give you the highest return on your money, your time, and ultimately your creative energy, which is the most valuable asset you have. Yes. So after you have all these choruses that you've written, what I like to do is go through. I like to spend some time away from these choruses and then come back to them. And I will have not heard this chorus since the time I wrote it. And that could be a month or 2 ago. And then I'm going to listen to all the choruses. And I'm going to basically rank them against one another. And I'm going to say, this one's just sucks. I'm going to throw it out right away. This one's okay. I'll consider this one. And then I'll, put that one in the running. And then I'll listen to the next one and be like, it's not very good either. And I'll toss that one. And then I'll listen to the next one. I'm like, oh, this is a banger. I'm definitely going to produce this one. And then I'm going to put that in the running as well. And so then I basically get a list, and then I'll, refine that list until I have the right project size of whatever I'm trying to go for. And ultimately, I will have the best of the best songs according to my objective opinion. And because I've spent so much time away from these choruses, I usually don't even remember what they sounded like initially. Like, I will go back on my hard drive and I will listen to a song and be like, I do not remember. Like, unless it was my voice on the recording, I would not have thought it was me, right? It's just like, I'm that far removed from it. And that gives me the ability to really, hold my song baby at arm's length and decide if the song baby is worth growing or not.
I have such an image in my head right now. Dude, that's just crazy. So, and I mean crazy in a really good way. I think this is so practical and approachable for people. And I love this because this is so different from advice that I'll even give. I just love this because it's a different perspective. And I think everyone has a different workflow that works for them. Everyone's wired differently. And so I think the point is to find something that works for you. And I just think this is a unique thing. I've never heard of this approach before. And I even have some anxiety thinking about parts of it you're describing. Hey, I'll just write 15 or a chorus and then I'll close that project. I'm like, wait, no, but you could finish it. No, so you know what I mean? But it makes so much sense because especially if you're starting. And I mean, I even think past if you're starting, but I think this is really good because you are increasing the odds of a banger. Like, to put it bluntly, you're increasing the odds of a killer track because you are trying to beat yourself. You're competing with yourself, and you're not leaving. I don't know. You're leaving so much room. You're leaving so much room, and I think that there's a lot to learn from that. So I kind of want to try this. It like freaks me out a little bit, but I kind of want to try it.
Yeah. I mean, and I'll give you a little pro tip on top of this is that if you go all the way back to episode 7, we talked about the virtuous cycle of learning and the vicious cycle of degradation. So it was a while ago, but go back, go listen to episode 7 because this is applicable here, right? Because we can write a song or write a chorus, right? And then decide if it's good or not, and we can get feedback. The ultimate feedback tool that I have experienced is using people who don't know you. Because if people who don't know you get into your chorus, then you know that song has a ton of potential. Because if I don't know you, I'm not afraid of offending. I'm not afraid to like swipe past your Instagram post or whatever. But if I put my choruses in front of a cold audience and they actually respond to it and listen to it and they're like, oh, this is actually a cool song. Even if it's not very well produced, then ultimately you know that you have a hit song in your possession. And you can test it, you can refine it. So I take this way too far, honestly. The last song that I wrote as of when we filmed this episode, I went through a process and I wrote 10 different choruses for the same song. So
what?
Here we go. This is my whole process breaking down for you. I wrote 10 songs. I tested those on Facebook ads to see which song people responded to the most. I then took the top song and then I rewrote the chorus 5 times. I did that test again to see who responded to which chorus the most, and then I took the top song of that one and then did it one more time, and I wrote 5 choruses again on top of the winner chorus. So now I have a triply refined chorus that I know is amazing. And the song might actually already be out as of the recording of this episode or when this episode airs. I don't know, but keep a lookout because it's going to be awesome. And you might think like, why go through this effort? That sounds like a lot of effort. And frankly, it is a lot of effort.
Like, to be real,
I recorded 10 choruses of the same song. Yeah. And I was just like sitting there. I would move around like the MIDI chorus line, and then I would have to then perform that vocally to like get a chorus on there. Anyway, so it was a lot of work. However, the crazy part is if you measure it from the initial chorus that, again, I'll remind you, was the top of 9 songs that I wrote. It was the highest performing out of 9 songs. And then I took that and then I wrote more choruses towards it. The top chorus, comparatively to the original, performed twice as well, meaning it got twice the response time. People watched it twice as long on average. And then I did it again. And again, it was another 2 times the response rate. So I got a response twice as much as that one. So it was the equivalent of 4 times better than the original one. So if your songs on average get, say, 10,000 streams when you release them, this one minimum will get at least 40,000 streams. Probably more, though, because, even though it's a 4 times more catchy song, that's probably going to give you disproportionate results in terms of the actual results, the shares, the engagement, everything that has to do with your song and your release will be multiplied by having a better chorus, a better hook. So this is why I am very dedicated to writing the best possible chorus I possibly can for each and every song that I release, because ultimately that is what's going to push your song into that next level that you need to reach in order to get the goals that you're trying to achieve. So whether that's by just writing more songs, refining the songs you already have more, or both, like myself, and go just ham on this, then ultimately, that's going to give you way better returns. And the best part about this whole process is, yes, I ran Facebook ads to actually test these songs.
Sure.
So it cost me about $60 total. to do all these tests.
To do this, yeah.
But it saved me thousands of dollars because I didn't have to record all of those songs.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to pay for a mix. I didn't have to pay for a master. Because I do that myself. I don't have to spend the time to do all of that stuff.
Yep.
Right? The time is just as valuable, if not more, than the money I would have spent having those songs produced. And so ultimately, I now have this more refined song from the songwriting stage, which is going to set up everything else for success. And so even if I, end up spending money on this, I saved myself money in the long run because I don't have to produce songs that aren't as good.
Dude.
So I can produce 5 songs that are going to give me 10 times the results rather than recording 10 songs that are going to give me 1/10 of the results.
This is like warping my mind for a second. And I think the thing, though, that the common ground, because if my natural state would be, dude, just release it. Just make it, put it out. Just make it, put it out. Make it. And yours, it's actually, we have we have common ground here because we're both still working very hard. Like, it's just mine takes the shape of full song, and then you're like chorus, test, chorus. So I think the common ground here, if you're listening, the big takeaway is the more you write, the better you will get, no matter what shape, form, whatever that looks like to you. You know what I mean? And like just about everything works. Like there's multiple ways to skin a cat, right? So I think the big thing is the more you write, the more you practice, the harder you're working on just redoing things, whether it's a whole song at a time or a chorus at a time. The common ground is the more you write, the better you're going to get. I think that's the takeaway. So, however you want to try it, like I've never created like that. And I just kind of want to try it just to see what it feels like. But however you're creating right now, I think the encouragement would be find a workflow. If you need to switch things up, switch things up. Like put yourself in a position to be able to create consistently and often. And that in itself, right? If we're using the baseball analogy like we've been using, that's more at bats, and the more at bats you have, you're going to be able to hit a home. The more more likely you're going to hit a home run as opposed to not even swinging.
So I want to quickly review the process that we've outlined because I added a whole bunch in there that I think will be confusing for a lot of you. And so if you don't want to run Facebook ads for your songs to test them, don't do it. It's fine. Yeah, totally. You don't need to. I took this way too far, essentially.
But that's this prolific super producer. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm that guy though who took the joke and just ran with it way too far, and it's like not. It's just not even funny anymore, right? Like my wife has to hold me back. She's like, "Babe, just don't do it.
It's time to go home."
Don't feel pressure to do that, and don't hold yourself up. Don't use that as a barrier to actually release music, because ultimately that's not what I'm trying to do. I want you to write the best music possible, but I also want you to actually release your music as well.
Yes.
So don't use that as an excuse to just not release stuff, not do anything. If you haven't ever released anything, just get it done, release something, because ultimately once you've done it once, then you can do it 100 times, and ultimately you can get better over time. You don't need to do all of this stuff all at once to ultimately get the best result possible. But that being said, let's review. First step, find something that inspires you. And once you've found that thing that inspires you, make sure you create a template to make it easy to be inspired. So find those sounds that you really like, that inspire you, create a template using those sounds. That's step one.
There it is.
Step two is write as many hooks as possible over those sounds. So write a chord progression, do some gibberish over the top of that to come up with something that sounds catchy to you. And that's step two. And then step three, which we haven't really talked about, is to actually utilize that gibberish to then create lyrics.
No, I can touch on that super quick. I think that was kind of implied, but yeah, we could break that down a little bit. So for the people that this might be helpful for, so you've got those hooks, right? And it's probably the mumbling gibberish, right? Usually, this is kind of what I'll teach, and full disclosure, in the guide that I have available for you, this is literally one of the steps, is to decipher the gibberish. And especially if you're beginning, this can be so helpful, especially if you're like, I don't know what to write about. I haven't experienced enough. Like, I think you've experienced plenty. I think just about anybody can write a song. You're a human. You have stories. You've been through things, right? Good and bad, I bet. And so your subconscious is just this crazy thing. And while you're mumbling gibberish over this music, that keyword that inspiring you, that's actually sparking something internally, to like bring your like wake up the faculties in your brain and shoot something out. You know, if you've seen like Inside Out, the movie Inside Out, where like things fire up in the brain, it's like, where did that come from? Yeah, your subconscious holds on to everything, and music can evoke a memory or a word. And so if there's like a phrase that slips out in your gibberish where you're like, huh, that kind of sounds like back then, and you're like, all of a sudden you're thinking about, oh, back then, and you're like, it can spark a whole concept for your song. That's the key, is to use the gibberish to kind of like spark an idea, a concept lyrically. And since you're already deciphering the chorus, you can go ahead and write the chorus. And once you've got the chorus written, you have a song. You have something that now informs the other parts of your song, the verse 1, verse 2, bridge, if there's even a bridge nowadays. But you know what I mean? So that's kind of that whole step with the gibberish, is to kind of to lean on the gibberish and let it kind of in a way kind of let you know what the song is. Like, it's a magical kind of part of the process that I can't really break down much better than I think that. You just have to experience it and trust it, you know?
And ultimately, as we mentioned before, the more you do this, the easier it will get, the more accessible those areas of your brain will be.
Yes.
The more your subconscious will get used to feeding that information up to your actual cognitive or behavioral stuff, because really you're just singing it. So, you know, likely it could actually just bypass your your actual cognitive ability entirely. It's just going to like come out. And so that's I'm not very good at that, frankly.
Oh man.
As you've probably picked up, I lean much more towards the analytical side of this than the emotional side, but I'm glad that you're getting both of these
that's
perspectives.
What I love about this. Yes, you're getting both. It's like, I love these conversations. It's so good. Yeah, but
so,
I would encourage you to try it. Just like I'm a little tempted to try Tyson's whole method with writing multiple choruses. Like, try to just be vulnerable and lean in and like let go and just see what happens. You never know. You might be surprised.
Yeah, definitely. And ultimately, this comes down to experimentation. Find out what works for you and do that.
Just do it on repeat. Yes. Whatever it looks like. Who cares? Does it work for you? Does it allow you to create consistently and actively? That's a home run.
Yeah.
Dude, we've really crushed
100%.
these baseball metaphors.
Thanks for watching, and thanks for listening to the prolific Super Producer Podcast.
Yes.
And someday we will learn the name of our own podcast.
Someday we'll be able to say it. Yeah.
17 episodes in and we still can't do it. And if you want us to talk about anything specific, be sure to leave us a review on whatever podcast platform you are on. And then also let us know in your review what topic you want us to cover, and we will dive into that for you in a future episode. So thanks again for watching and listening, and we will see you in the next one.